just the height differentiation. So everybody's ready? Alright. So my name is Keeyeon Warren, and I'm a Korean American adoptee. I was adopted when I was 11, and I moved to Western Mass. And I came back to Korea first in 2002. But my story takes place actually in 2001 when I was backpacking through Southeast Asia, specifically to Cambodia. At the time, my parents were actually doing medical missions trip and living in Phnom Penh. And at that time, I was also living in China. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to visit my parents and also see Angkor Wat, which was one of my favorite things because I'm a huge fan of architecture. So I was backpacking by myself in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, and finally I make it to the destination of Siem Reap, where Angkor Wat is. And when I'm at Angkor Wat, it's my final night, and I had met a lot of different friends, as you do when you are traveling backpacking. And I met this really fantastic group of Norwegians, and we're all traveling, and one of them happened to be a nurse. She was about 6'2". I'm 5'6", although my driver's license says 5'6.5". So it was a good night at the end of the night, and it was that year actually that Tomb Raider first came out. And because of Tomb Raider, and it was shot in Siem Reap, it actually caused a local buzz. And there was this very famous bar that Angelina Jolie apparently frequented with her crew called the Piano Bar. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's the only bar in Siem Reap that has this really beautiful orange walls everywhere. So I get there, and well, I proceeded to drink. And it was my last night. The next day I was going to, actually I was heading over to Thailand, and I drank too much, obviously. And essentially in Siem Reap or Cambodia, wherever you need to go from point A to point B, you use scooters. So everybody has a driver, and you sit behind the driver. So it's essentially in Korea you have the 대리운전s, which are the people who come pick you up when you're drunk, drive your car back to your house. Better. It costs about $1. So we get back to our guest house, which was called Smiley's. And my first trip, this is actually my second trip to Cambodia, and my first trip, I stayed at Smiley's 1. And by my second trip, Smiley's had gotten so popular that they opened up the second branch, 2. And when I get there, the gates are locked. And all my friends, my Norwegian friends, some Israeli, some from the States, some from Australia, we're all locked out. We're knocking on the gates. It's only about 3:30 in the morning, which we think was quite early. And no one's opening the gates. But we can see that people are watching TV and having conversations inside the compound. So one of my friends says, "Hey, Keeyeon, why don't you just hop over the fence and unlock the door and let us in?" And at the time I thought it was a really great idea because, hey, I just finished a rock climbing trip in southwest China. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go. So I proceed to climb up this fence. And at the top of this fence, there are these spikes because crime is a problem in Cambodia. I already knew this because my parents actually had to have 2 guards, day guard and a night guard, to watch over their house every day. And at the time I was wearing tivas, or reef sandals. And you know how thin they are. They're very comfortable, but they're very thin. And in the state of mind that I was, I thought that it was a good idea to put my foot on top of the spike because I weighed so little. And I was going to do a pivoting move. And then just kind of hop over and unlock and let my friends win, and thus perhaps winning this Norwegian nurse's fancy. So here I go, I'm climbing up, put my foot up, and as soon as I put my weight on this foot, I felt it. You literally, you know, when people talk about time slowing down, it really does slow down. And it hit the bottom of my foot bone. I know there are 200 some odd bones in your foot. I don't know which one exactly it hit, but it was literally right at the center of my foot. So sobered me up quickly, and I said, you know what, I am not going to put further pressure on this. I'm going to remove my foot from the spike, jump back down, which probably wasn't a smart thing to do, but I did jump back down and I sat down right away. And then all this commotion. And of course the owner's son came out and everybody's freaking out, looking at things. While I'm sitting, there are these red ants that are biting all over my waist. But at the time, I was happy. And it was okay. And it wasn't okay until the owner's son, as he was smoking a cigarette, said, "Put your foot up." And I said, what? Okay. So I put my foot up, and he proceeds to stick his cigarette butt into my foot, at which point my Norwegian nurse said, "No. Where's the nearest clinic?" So she picks me up in her arms. Again, I'm 5'6" or 6.5. She's about solid 6'3". And she's picked me up, put me on a scooter. She gets on a scooter, and 6 other people follow on their scooters. And we proceed to the medical clinic. At this medical clinic, it's owned and operated by a French company, a French NGO. And my father is a nurse anesthetist, and my uncle's a doctor, my sister's a nurse, so I'm quite familiar with the medical industry. And back where I'm from in the States, things are relatively sanitary. And during this trip, one thing that I really thought that I was part of was that I always thought that no matter where I traveled, I could fit into the local population. I could understand their poverty, I could understand their pain, because I was at once poor. And I thought that I had this shared commonality with these people. I had bought these t-shirts that says, "Watch out, danger, landmines, danger." And soon as I got there, and to one of the rooms, there were literally buckets of blood. And what that made me, at that point, I actually really realized that I wasn't as local as I really thought that was. Because landmines are such a common occurrence in Cambodia. It is one of the highest concentrations of landmines outside of the DMZ in Korea. That at that point I realized that, you know what, as much as I think that I understand and connect with these people, their daily lives is totally different than what I have to deal with. And all the Cambodian scooter drivers, it was nothing to them. They're just walking around, and I'm freaking out because I'm like, tetanus, hepatitis, I'm thinking 12 different diseases that can go through my head. Well, these people, it was nothing. And the French doctor, when he looked at my foot, he was so disappointed that we woke him up at 4 in the morning for essentially what it is, a cut on someone's foot. And it turns out earlier in the day, he actually had to operate on 4 patients who accidentally stepped on landmines. And fiasco, or any word for that matter, is really interesting because there are always multiple meanings to words. And one of the really interesting things that I learned at that time was that, me spiking my foot was a fiasco in itself. It was a complete disaster. However, me thinking that I was part and I understood what was happening in the daily lives of these people, that's the true meaning of fiasco, which is the utter humiliation of oneself. And at that time, I realized that I needed to be more humble about who I was, and that I can have the best of intentions, and I can be what I can be, but no matter where I go, I'm just going to be that person who's essentially a visitor. And I still take that lesson with me today, and that's whenever I think of fiasco, for a long time, I actually thought of it as disaster. But then now I know the true meaning of fiasco, which really means, the utter humiliation of something. So that's my story, and I think I came under 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.